One of the pods containing the soil sample is loose. Roy heads out and uses a clamp to catch the floating pod. This part isn't very significant, but if they missed catching the pod, there would be no story. Because in the pod is Martian soil, and within the soil is a single cell of Martian origin. The single cell appears to be dead. But when Hugh changes the atmospheric settings to match ancient Earth, the organism is revived from its dormant state. The organism begins to grow and becomes multicellular. Hugh notices that each of the cells, unlike human cells, is all muscle, all brain, and all eye. In humans, different types of cells come together to form eyes, muscles, and the brain. For the alien, the cells are kind of supercells. I know I'm trying to justify the explanation in the film, but honestly, I have no idea what the concept of this all brawn and brain thing is. But hey, it's fiction. America names the alien Calvin. However, there is an accident in the lab that messes up the atmospheric conditions. Calvin goes dormant. Hugh, the smartass, uses electricity to try and resuscitate Calvin. Calvin gets pissed and breaks the electricity wand, and as a bonus, breaks Hugh's hand too. Hugh faints. Calvin uses the broken wand to rip out of the containment unit. Calvin then consumes a friendly neighborhood lab rat and grows in size. Roy enters to save Hugh. He gets Hugh out, but gets trapped with Calvin. Roy tries to flamethrow Calvin, but fire doesn't seem to affect it. Calvin retaliates by entering Roy's mouth and ripping him from the inside out. Calvin exits Roy and has become even bigger. The still active flamethrower triggers a fire alarm, and air vents open up. Calvin escapes from one of the air vents. The ship loses connectivity to Earth. Sho sends out an SOS call, which reaches Earth unknown to the crew. Katerina decides to step out and have a look at the antenna. She realizes that the coolant has been consumed by Calvin as food. This has caused the comm failure as well. Calvin attacks her as she tries to re-enter. Her suit is damaged, and coolant from her suit enters her head chamber. She realizes that the rest of the crew would be put in danger, and hence decides to drown and die outside. But Calvin makes its way to the thrusters to enter. Sho tries to turn on the thrusters as Calvin tries to enter them. He runs low on fuel doing this. All the thrusting has caused the space station to begin entering Earth's orbit. What's up with Hugh, and how is Calvin on his leg? As the crew plans to cut off the atmosphere from the rest of the station except their own, Calvin has already made it to their module. David and Miranda make it into a module, and Sho shuts himself into a sleep capsule. Calvin has eaten a part of Hugh along with his tracker, so now they are able to track Calvin's location. David and Miranda use Hugh's dead body to lure it into a module. Remember that SOS call that reached Earth? Well, Miranda had planned earlier that in case the crew loses control of the space station, Earth should just send a spacecraft to push the space station into deep space. So the incoming spacecraft is doing just that. It locks on and begins to push. Sho thinks that rescue has arrived and makes his way to the spacecraft and manually opens the latch. Calvin attacks. David and Miranda try to save Sho, but they can't. The manual hatch opening sends the capsule spinning onto the space station, damaging it severely. The temperature and oxygen begin to drop rapidly. David and Miranda are in a module and Calvin in the other. As they prepare to die, they realize all the pushing has caused the space station to drop into Earth's orbit again. Calvin could survive the re-entry, and Earth is doomed. David has one last idea. He recollects 2 escape pods that are configured to autopilot back to Earth. He tells Miranda to get into one pod and make it to Earth. He decides to lure Calvin with the oxygen glowing thingy things into the other pod. He plans to override the autopilot and fly into deep space with Calvin on board. David lures Calvin into his pod, and Miranda enters hers. Miranda has a navigation failure and begins to go off course from Earth. It is her pod that begins to float into deep space, not David's. David tries to pilot his pod into deep space, but Calvin immobilizes him. David is unable to control the ship, and it enters Earth's orbit. It lands safely in Vietnam. 2 fishermen come to check the pod out. The ending of life reveals that while the audience is made to think that Miranda is the one who enters Earth, we are shown that is actually David's pod with Calvin. Surprisingly, David is alive, and Calvin has spread out like a web over David. Why has Calvin kept David alive? Either way, the film ends with multiple boats coming to the pod to rescue David as he screams for them to not to. They manage to open the pod. The film ends. Earth is doomed unless there is a sequel. Thanks again for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts on what happens next if you'd like to see a sequel. And do you think Calvin destroys Earth? Or can the people of Earth destroy Calvin? Please comment below how you would kill Calvin. And thank you for your support. Remember to smash the like button as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. Click subscribe and turn on the little bell icon for notifications of new uploaded content. Until next time, this is Recap Remix signing off.